The November rain fell in steady sheets outside La Maison D'Or, one of Los Angeles's most exclusive French restaurants. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast warm light over polished mahogany tables and pristine white linens. The establishment prided itself on catering to Hollywood's elite, with walls adorned by photographs of famous patrons and a wine list that could make even the wealthiest pause. Leonardo DiCaprio, fresh from a morning surf session in Malibu, pushed through the restaurant's heavy glass doors. His appearance was decidedly un-Hollywood: faded blue jeans with a small tear at the knee, a weathered UCLA hoodie that had seen better days, well-worn sneakers still bearing traces of beach sand, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. His face bore the stubble of several days without shaving, and his hair, still damp from the ocean, curled beneath the cap's edges. He had promised to meet his old friend, director Martin Scorsese, for lunch. Martin had specifically chosen this restaurant, knowing its reputation for discretion and excellent cuisine. Leo checked his phone. He was 5 minutes early. "Excuse me." Leonardo approached the host stand where a young waiter named Marcus was filling in for the regular maitre d', who had called in sick. Marcus, barely 22 and only 3 weeks into his job at La Maison D'Or, looked up from the reservation book. Marcus's eyes swept over Leonardo's casual attire with barely concealed disdain. In his brief tenure at the restaurant, he had already developed a keen sense of who belonged and who didn't. This disheveled man in worn clothes certainly didn't fit the typical clientele profile. "Sir," Marcus said, his tone crisp and professional but tinged with condescension, "I'm afraid we have a dress code. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the cafe down the street?" Leonardo, accustomed to such situations when he dressed down, smiled politely. "I have a reservation. It should be under Scorsese." Marcus glanced at the book, noting the VIP designation next to the name. His frown deepened. "I see the reservation, but I'm afraid Mr. Scorsese hasn't arrived yet. And regardless, our dress code—" "I understand," Leonardo interrupted gently. "I'm actually meeting Mr. Scorsese. I'm Leo." "Sir," Marcus cut him off, his voice growing sharper. In his mind, this was clearly someone trying to crash a celebrity lunch. "I cannot allow you to wait inside dressed like this. It's restaurant policy. Our other guests expect a certain standard." Several nearby diners had begun to notice the exchange. A woman at a corner table whispered to her companion, pointing discreetly. Leonardo sighed. He could easily resolve this by removing his cap and making himself more recognizable, but he had learned to value these moments of anonymity. "Look, I understand you're doing your job, but—" "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," Marcus said firmly, stepping around the host stand. His youth and inexperience made him overzealous in enforcing what he perceived as restaurant standards. "We don't serve vagrants here." The word hung in the air like a slap. Leonardo's eyebrows rose slightly, but his expression remained calm. "Vagrants," he repeated quietly. "You heard me," Marcus said, emboldened by what he interpreted as the man's lack of protest. "This isn't some beach bar. This is La Maison D'Or. We have standards. Now please leave before I have to call security." Just then, the kitchen doors swung open, and Jean-Pierre Dubois, the restaurant's senior manager, emerged. A distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and an impeccable suit, Jean-Pierre had worked in fine dining for 4 decades. He had been making his rounds when he noticed the commotion at the front. His experienced eyes took in the scene immediately: Marcus's aggressive stance, the shabby-dressed customer's patient demeanor, and the growing attention from other diners. As he approached, something about the customer's profile seemed familiar. "Is there a problem here, Marcus?" Jean-Pierre asked smoothly, though his tone carried a note of warning. "Mr. Dubois, this person is trying to crash Mr. Scorsese's lunch reservation," Marcus explained, his confidence slightly shaken by his supervisor's arrival. "I've asked him to leave, but he's being difficult." Jean-Pierre stepped closer, and as he did, recognition dawned on his face. Even with the cap and casual clothes, he knew exactly who stood before him. "Mr. DiCaprio," Jean-Pierre said warmly, extending his hand. "What a pleasure to see you again. I apologize for any confusion." The color drained from Marcus's face as understanding crashed over him like a wave. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly as he stared at the man he had just called a vagrant. "Jean-Pierre," Leonardo shook the manager's hand warmly. "Good to see you. I was just explaining to your colleague here that I'm meeting Martin for lunch." Of course," Jean-Pierre said, shooting a sharp glance at Marcus. "Please, let me show you to your table. Mr. Scorsese called to say he's running a few minutes late." As Jean-Pierre led Leonardo toward the dining room, he paused and turned back to Marcus. "My office. Now." Marcus stood frozen, watching as several diners who had witnessed the exchange whispered excitedly, some already pulling out their phones. The waiter he had tried to eject was Leonardo DiCaprio, Academy Award winner, environmental activist, and one of Hollywood's most respected actors. In the dining room, Jean-Pierre personally seated Leonardo at the best table, overlooking the restaurant's private garden. "Mr. DiCaprio, I cannot apologize enough for Marcus's behavior. He's new and clearly doesn't understand." "It's fine, Jean-Pierre, really," Leonardo said, finally removing his cap and running a hand through his hair. "We all make mistakes." "No, it's not fine," Jean-Pierre insisted. "His behavior was inexcusable. Rest assured, he will be terminated immediately." Leonardo's expression grew serious. "Jean-Pierre, please don't do that." The manager looked surprised. "But Mr. DiCaprio, he insulted you. He called you a vagrant. In my 40 years in this business." "He's young," Leonardo interrupted. "He was trying to do his job, even if he went about it the wrong way. Firing him won't teach him anything except to be bitter." Jean-Pierre hesitated, clearly torn between his desire to defend his establishment's reputation and respect for his customers' wishes. "Look," Leonardo continued, "I've been in his shoes, young, trying to prove myself, making mistakes. The difference is, I had people who gave me second chances. Maybe this could be a learning experience for him instead of a career-ending one." Just then, Marcus appeared in the doorway of the dining room, his face pale and eyes red-rimmed. Jean-Pierre had clearly given him a severe dressing down in his office. "Sir, Mr. DiCaprio, I..." Marcus struggled to find words. "I'm so sorry. I was completely out of line. There's no excuse for how I spoke to you." Leonardo studied the young man for a moment. "What's your name?" "Marcus, sir. Marcus Chen." "How long have you been working here, Marcus?" 3 weeks, sir." Leonardo nodded thoughtfully. "And before this?" "I was a server at a small bistro in Koreatown. This is my first job at a high-end restaurant." "Sit down," Leonardo said, gesturing to an empty chair. Marcus looked at Jean-Pierre, who nodded reluctantly. The young waiter sat on the edge of the chair as if it might bite him. "Marcus, let me tell you something," Leonardo began. "When I was starting out in this business, I waited tables too. I know what it's like to size people up based on appearances. But here's the thing, you never really know who someone is just by looking at them." Marcus nodded miserably. "The real question," Leonardo continued, "is what you do after you make a mistake. Do you learn from it, or do you let it define you?" "I want to learn, Mr. DiCaprio. I really do. This job means everything to me. I've been saving for college, and..." Marcus's voice broke slightly. Jean-Pierre cleared his throat. "Mr. DiCaprio, while I deeply appreciate your generosity, I have to consider the restaurant's reputation." "Jean-Pierre," Leonardo said firmly, "your reputation is built on more than just exclusivity. It's built on class, on how you treat people. Giving a young man a second chance. That's the kind of story that enhances a reputation. At that moment, Martin Scorsese walked in, his signature eyebrows rising as he took in the scene, Leonardo in his beach attire, a terrified-looking young waiter, and Jean-Pierre standing stiffly beside them. "Leo," Martin said with amusement, "what have you gotten yourself into now?" Leonardo grinned. "Just a little misunderstanding, Marty. Marcus here was protecting the restaurant standards." Martin's keen director's eye assessed the situation quickly. "Ah. And let me guess, you're advocating for clemency?" "Something like that." Martin chuckled and took his seat. "You know, Jean-Pierre, I've known Leo for 20 years. He could have thrown his weight around, made a scene, had this young man blacklisted from every restaurant in LA. Instead, he's sitting here advocating for him. That tells you something about character, both his and potentially this young man's." Jean-Pierre sighed, his stern expression softening. "Very well. Marcus, you'll remain on staff. But you're on probation. One more incident." "There won't be," Marcus said quickly. "I promise." "And you'll be working with our senior staff for additional training," Jean-Pierre added. "You have Mr. DiCaprio to thank for this second chance." Marcus stood, bowing slightly. "Thank you, Mr. DiCaprio. I won't forget this." As Marcus left to return to his duties, Jean-Pierre also excused himself, leaving Leonardo and Martin alone. "Still trying to save the world, one person at a time?" Martin asked with a wry smile. Leonardo shrugged. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Marty. Besides, he's got passion. He just needs to learn how to channel it better." Their lunch proceeded smoothly, with Marcus serving their table attentively but professionally. He had clearly taken the lesson to heart, treating every customer with equal respect regardless of their appearance. As they finished their meal, Martin excused himself to take a phone call, leaving Leonardo alone. Marcus approached the table one more time. "Mr. DiCaprio," he said quietly, "I wanted to thank you again. Not just for saving my job, but for the lesson. I've been thinking about what you said." Leonardo looked up. And I realized I've been so focused on trying to act like I belong here that I forgot why I wanted to work in hospitality in the first place, to make people feel welcome." Leonardo smiled. "That's a good realization, Marcus. Can I ask you something?" Marcus ventured. "Sure. Why didn't you just tell me who you were right away? It would have saved us both a lot of trouble." Leonardo considered the question. "Because sometimes the most valuable lessons come from our mistakes. If I had just pulled rank, you might have apologized and moved on, but would you have really learned anything? This way, you'll remember." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I will. Every time I see someone walk in, no matter how they're dressed, I'll remember." As Leonardo prepared to leave, Jean-Pierre returned to the table. "Mr. DiCaprio, I wanted to thank you again for your understanding. And for the lesson, not just for Marcus, but for me as well. Oh. I've been in this business so long, sometimes I forget that rules should serve a purpose, not become the purpose itself. You've reminded me of that." Leonardo stood, shaking Jean-Pierre's hand. "We all need those reminders sometimes." As he walked toward the exit, Leonardo could hear Marcus greeting new customers at the host stand. "Good afternoon, welcome to La Maison D'Or. How may I help you today?" The warmth in his voice was genuine now, not performed. Outside, the rain had stopped, and afternoon sunlight broke through the clouds. Leonardo pulled his cap back on and smiled to himself. He had come for lunch and ended up teaching a lesson he hadn't planned. But then again, he reflected, the best lessons rarely are planned. News of the incident spread quickly through the restaurant industry grapevine. Within days, it became a trending story on social media, not because of the initial confrontation, but because of how it was resolved. Leonardo DiCaprio saves waiter's job after being called vagrant, read one headline. But the stories that followed focused on something deeper, the power of second chances and the importance of looking beyond appearances. Marcus Chen continued working at La Maison D'Or. Under Jean-Pierre's mentorship and with the memory of that rainy afternoon always in mind, he eventually became one of the restaurant's most requested servers. He was known for his ability to make every guest feel welcome, whether they arrived in Armani or activewear. Years later, when Marcus opened his own restaurant, a casual bistro that explicitly welcomed people from all walks of life, he hung a framed photo in the entrance. It was a picture of Leonardo DiCaprio in a hoodie and cap, taken by a diner that fateful day. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "Everyone deserves a seat at the table." The story became a favorite in hospitality training programs, a reminder that true service isn't about judging who deserves respect, but about extending it universally. It was a lesson learned not through corporate policies or training manuals, but through the simple act of choosing understanding over punishment, growth over grudges. For Leonardo, it was just another Tuesday, a lunch with an old friend that turned into an unexpected teaching moment. But for Marcus, Jean-Pierre, and countless others who heard the story, it was a reminder that grace, when offered genuinely, has the power to transform not just individuals, but entire cultures. The incident at La Maison D'Or became more than just a celebrity anecdote. It became a touchstone for discussions about prejudice, second chances, and the true meaning of hospitality. In an industry often obsessed with appearances and status, it served as a powerful reminder that the most valuable currency isn't fame or wealth, but simple human decency. And somewhere in Los Angeles, in a small bistro run by a former waiter who learned a valuable lesson on a rainy November afternoon, everyone who walks through the door, whether in designer suits or beach clothes, receives the same warm greeting, "Welcome. We're glad you're here." The ripple effects of that single afternoon continued to spread. Jean-Pierre instituted new training programs at La Maison D'Or, focusing not just on service standards but on the philosophy behind them. He shared the story at industry conferences, advocating for a more inclusive approach to fine dining. Marcus, meanwhile, became something of a mentor himself to newer staff members. He would often share his story, not as a cautionary tale, but as an inspiration. "The clothes don't make the person," he would say. And sometimes, the most valuable customers are the ones who teach us to be better. As for Leonardo, he continued to visit La Maison D'Or, sometimes dressed up, sometimes in his beach attire. Each time, he was greeted with the same respect and warmth. The restaurant had learned its lesson well. True hospitality isn't about maintaining appearances, but about recognizing the humanity in everyone who walks through the door. The story of the unrecognized star became a legend in the restaurant world, a reminder that sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected moments. It proved that celebrity can be used not for personal gain, but as a force for positive change. And it demonstrated that second chances, when given freely, have the power to transform not just individuals, but entire communities. In the end, what could have been just another story of celebrity entitlement became something far more meaningful, a testament to the power of forgiveness, the importance of humility, and the transformative potential of choosing kindness in a world that often rewards the opposite. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoy this video and learned a lesson. I would be grateful for your likes. Also don't forget to subscribe and comment on the video. See you soon.